Hey, this video aims to give you some insights into how you can use letter pairs to memorize the Rubik's Cube. The memory methods described in this video aren't the only ways of using letters, but they're certainly among the most popular. If you've gotten this far, I imagine you already have a lettering scheme. If you don't, then see the description for the link for SPEFs to get an idea of what a lettering scheme is all about. Letter pairs are convenient for any blindfold method, especially M2 and 3 cycles. With M2, pairs allow you to easily keep track of the M-slice, and as for 3 cycles, pairs make it easy to differentiate between each of the 3 cycles, since each 3 cycle can be represented by a single pair. Letter pair images work by combining 2 letters into the one image. For example, here what I've done is I've gotten the letter C plus T, and that's given me cat. All I've done is thrown an A in the middle of it, and I've got cat. It's important to emphasize though that these are called letter pair images for a reason, and even though cat is in itself a word, you need to use your mind and actually picture the cat. The way you can go about picturing the cat, or any other image for that matter, is by imagining yourself walking somewhere or being in some place that you're very familiar with, such as where you live. So you might imagine yourself, for example, opening your fridge and there's a cat inside it. Or you might imagine yourself walking into your bedroom and there's a cat there. But images can go a lot further than that, because what you can do is combine multiple images into the one location. Let me show you what I mean by that. In this example, the memo is C plus T, so that can be cat, and B plus L, and that image can be blood. So there's the B and the L from that, so blood. Now, rather than independently memorizing these, so say you walk into your bedroom and there's a cat, then you walk into your kitchen and there's a puddle of blood, you can combine the two images into the one entity to make it much easier to recall. So for example, you could imagine a cat bleeding to death. It would even be better if it's your cat bleeding to death, because the more unpleasant or profane your imagination is, the easier it is to remember. So if you want to use images, it may help if you make your imagination as gory, dirty, and offensive as possible. In order to create an image from 2 letters, you can either derive the images on the spot, or you can memorize a list of letter pair images that account for every possible combination of 2 letters in your lettering scheme. Even if you don't set off to memorize a list of letter pair images, you will find that after a while of deriving images on the spot, you'll begin to subconsciously create and memorize your own list. Letter pair images are a very powerful system, and if later on you decide to do multi-blind or big cubes blind, you'll be glad to know letter pair images. You can also pair letters to make sentences. This is done by pairing letters into words, names, or sounds, and then linking the pairs together to make a relatively coherent sentence. Here's an example. Here I have 5 letter pairs: TH, PL, VC, WA, and CK. From that memo, I've constructed the sentence, "The plant vacuum wants cake." And I've put green under the letters from the memo and capitalized them. So TH obviously from the obviously comes from there. PL from plant obviously comes from PL up there. What's a plant vacuum? I have no idea. It's not anything, I don't think. But that doesn't matter, because this sentence has correct grammar, it flows quite nicely, and sentences like this are generally pretty easy to remember. The more difficult part is actually creating the sentences in the first place. In addition to using only the letters in your memo to derive your sentence, you can also add filler words. These aren't actually part of your memo. The purpose of these fillers is to make the sentence flow nicer and be easier to construct. Here's an example sentence with fillers. Here the letter pairs are UA, EN, TF, and DW. From here, I can directly derive unarmed from U and A, envelope from EN, transformed from TF, and dwarf from DW. Now, rather than just saying those words how they are, I've thrown in 3 fillers: the, into, and a. So now the sentence is, the unarmed envelope transformed into a dwarf. If you use sentences, fillers that you could use may include words such as the, then, and, with, and of course, many others, including verbs. If you haven't noticed, a problem you may encounter with fillers is having trouble differentiating between fillers and important words that actually contain the letters from your memo. But over time, this will become less of an issue, and it will become very easy to tell which words are fillers and which ones aren't. That's all I'm going to say about sentence memorization. I personally have never been any good with it, and I feel like someone who actually uses sentences would give a better explanation. When I first tried them, I found it very difficult to structure the sentences into something that was memorable or even remotely coherent. Having said that, there are many other people who have gotten really fast with sentences. Audio pairs are typically used for memorizing the corners, but some find them just as effective for memorizing the edges. This method falls into the category of an auditory method. That is, you solely remember how the memo sounds, rather than relying on images, visual, or some kind of coherent structure, like a sentence. So the way audio pairs work is by pairing 2 letters together to make a 1-syllable sound, word, or name. For example, you could memorize the letters I and J as simply idge, as if it was spelled I-D-G-E. That's not even a word, and it might seem stupid trying to memorize letters this way, because idge doesn't even make sense, and nonsensical things are usually more difficult to remember. But that doesn't matter, because this memory method takes advantage of a unique function of the brain that aids humans with processing sounds. It's called echoic memory, also called the auditory loop. You would have noticed that when you hear something, or someone says something to you, you can play the voice or sound back in your head. This can be particularly helpful if you didn't process what someone said the first time, and you can play it back in your head instead of asking them to say it again. Echoic memory is something we all have, and with it, we can memorize an unordered sequence of sounds and words. Obviously, you won't always be able to make a sound from just 2 letters. With the example I used before, for I and J, it's easy to see how you can remember those letters as idge. But what about something else, like V and L? How are you going to remember that? By saying V? That's a bit awkward. What we have here is 2 consonants. Whenever you have 2 consonants, all you have to do to produce an audible sound is throw a vowel in the middle, and voila. So just use whatever vowel comes to mind first. They'll all produce a nice sound. Here I'm going to use E, which produces vowel. If you have, however, 1 vowel and 1 consonant, you won't have to do that. Like this, for example, D's the consonant and E's the vowel. You will always be able to make a sound just using those 2 letters. So you could say that as D or D. Another example of a consonant and a vowel is this. A and K, you could say that as ak or ache. If you have 2 vowels in the pair, you should still be able to make a sound from the 2 letters. For example, here with A and E, you could say that as A or whatever you liked. But this can cause some problems though, because certain pairs may sound alike. You can solve this by perhaps coming up with your own unique sound or word specific to that pair, or by making some sort of mental note, such as using your visual memory as well. If I was to use audio pairs for IE, WF, MR, and SU, I would memorize it something like I, WAF, more, SU. The thing I love about this memory method is how effortless it is. You don't need to memorize a list of audio pairs, and you don't even need to be good at coming up with words on the spot. You just randomly throw in a vowel when appropriate. Despite audio pairs being very simple, there is somewhat of a catch though. Echoic memory is only short term, so if you're going to use this to memorize, say, the corners, I strongly advise you to memorize the corners last, then solve them first. And likewise, of course, if you were to use audio to memorize the edges. I hope that gave you some ideas of how you can better memorize the cube. Since you're watching this, I think it's very likely that you're still searching for that sweet memory system that's just right for you. Be persistent. You may need to get a taste of the entire spectrum of memory methods before you find the system that works best for you. Remember to be patient and experiment with various memory methods and different combinations of memory methods. See ya.